The flood was over. The world was wiped clean. But what Noah did next, no one talks about. He had just witnessed the destruction of everything. His friends, his neighbors, entire cities, all gone. So what was his first act in this new world? It wasn't what you'd expect from a man who had just saved humanity. In fact, it was something that would lead to one of the first great family divides in history. Stay with me, because what happened after the flood is just as shocking as the flood itself. We all know about the Great Flood, the rain that fell for 40 days and 40 nights, the waters that covered even the highest mountains. But what we don't often talk about is why Noah was chosen in the first place. What made him so special? The answer might surprise you. Imagine a world where people only cared about themselves, where neighbors hurt each other without thinking twice, where violence was as common as breathing. The Bible paints a dark picture of those days. The earth was filled with violence. It was so bad that God looked down and felt heartbroken about creating humans at all. But then, there was Noah. Most of us think we know why God picked Noah. We assume God looked down at all the terrible people, spotted one good man and said, "I'll save that one." It makes a nice, simple story. Be good, and God will reward you. Be bad, and God will punish you. But when we look closer at what the Bible actually says, we discover something amazing, something that flips the whole story upside down. Did you know that the very first mention of grace in the entire Bible comes in Noah's story? Genesis 6:8 says, "Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." And here's the important part. This comes before we hear anything about Noah being a good person, before we learn about his character, before we hear about his obedience. Grace came first, not Noah's goodness. This changes everything we thought we knew. What if Noah wasn't chosen because he was already good? What if God chose him first, and then Noah became good? It's like finding out the ending of your favorite movie was written before the beginning. Only after God showed Noah grace does Genesis 6:9 tell us that Noah was righteous, blameless, and walked with God. It's as if God's favor came first, and then these qualities followed. Noah didn't earn God's kindness by being righteous. He became righteous after receiving God's kindness. Think about what this means for us. Does God only love people who have their act together, or does His love come first, helping us become better? Does God choose us because we're good, or do we become good because God chooses us? The truth is powerful. God chose Noah because of grace first, not because Noah earned it. God picked Noah because God is good, not because Noah was perfect. This changes how we should see ourselves too. Maybe we don't have to get everything right before God will love us. Maybe His love is what helps us get things right in the first place. Even while God was planning to send floodwaters to wash away evil, He was already planning to save Noah. Even when humanity had failed in every way, God was preparing a fresh start. In the middle of judgment, God's grace was working. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Noah and his family finally stepped off the ark onto muddy ground. The flood was over. The world was empty and new. What would Noah do first? Build a house? Plant some food? Take a well-deserved nap after all that animal care? What Noah did next surprised everyone, and it changed how God would deal with humans forever. The rain had stopped. The waters had gone down. After being cooped up for over a year with thousands of animals, Noah and his family finally stepped onto dry ground. Take a moment to picture that scene. Everything they once knew was gone. No houses, no cities, no familiar trees or hills, just mud, scattered debris, and an eerie silence where bustling towns once stood. What would you do first if you were Noah? If we're honest, most of us would probably start building a shelter or looking for food. After all, they had basic survival needs. Or maybe we'd just sit down and cry with relief that the ordeal was finally over. But Noah did something that seems strange to us today. While the mud was still squishing between his toes, Noah began gathering stones. One by one, he stacked them together. Not to build a house for his family, not to make a pen for the animals. Noah was building an altar, a place of worship. This wasn't just any altar. This was the first altar mentioned anywhere in the Bible. The first structure in the post-flood world wasn't a home or a barn. It was a place to thank God. Then Noah did something even more surprising. He took some of the animals that had just survived the flood, and offered them as sacrifices to God. Think about how precious those animals were. There weren't many of each kind left in the entire world. Each pair was the future of that species. Yet Noah gave some back to God. It would be like surviving a worldwide disaster with just a handful of food, and then using some of that food to say, "Thank you," instead of eating it. That's how much worship mattered to Noah. As the smoke from Noah's altar drifted upward, the Bible tells us God smelled a pleasing aroma. The Hebrew phrase connects beautifully with Noah's own name, which means rest or comfort. His worship brought a kind of peace after the storm of God's judgment. This wasn't just Noah saying, "Thanks for the boat ride." Deep down, Noah understood something important. Even though the flood had washed away evil people, sin still remained in human hearts. He knew they needed God's forgiveness to truly start fresh. The water had cleansed the earth, but it couldn't cleanse the human soul. So, what happened when Noah's worship reached heaven? How did God respond to this sacrifice? The smell of burning offerings rose up, and something changed in God's heart toward humanity. It was like Noah's worship opened the door for a whole new relationship between heaven and earth. Noah's first action wasn't about his own comfort or even his family's needs. He built an altar and made sacrifices that literally soothed God's heart. This act of worship set the foundation for everything that would follow. The flood had changed the physical landscape forever, but Noah's worship was about to change how God and humans would relate to each other forever. His sacrifice opened the way for something brand new, a promise that would affect every person born from that day forward. God was about to make a commitment that would change everything, a promise we can still see in the sky after every rainfall. He is one of the reasons God decided not to punish any life on earth again. Noah's sacrifice rose up to heaven like a sweet perfume. And God's response? It would change the course of human history forever. Have you ever wondered why God promised never to flood the earth again? After all, he knew humans would still mess up. He knew the same problems would come back. So, why make such a huge promise? The answer shows us something amazing about who God really is. As the smoke from Noah's altar drifted upward, the Bible gives us a rare look into God's thoughts. Genesis says, God said in his heart, like we're overhearing God talking to himself. And what God says is shocking. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans. God decided this even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. Let that sink in. God acknowledges that people haven't actually changed. The flood didn't fix the human heart problem. The same evil that caused the flood was still there in Noah and his family. Yet, knowing this, God still promises, "Never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done." This is a massive shift in how God would deal with human sin. Instead of wiping the slate clean again, God chose a different path forward. It's like a parent who tries a completely new approach after realizing that punishment alone isn't working. God wasn't giving up on justice. He was finding a new way to work with flawed humans. God's promises got very practical too. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. These weren't small promises. God was guaranteeing that nature itself would keep working in a reliable way so people could grow food, plan their lives, and thrive in this new world. Then, God did something formal and serious. He established a covenant, not just with Noah, but with every living creature on earth. This included the birds overhead, the animals grazing nearby, even the bugs crawling in the mud. God wanted all creation to know his promise was for keeps. The most beautiful part came next, the rainbow. When God mentioned putting his bow in the clouds, he was using a powerful picture. The Hebrew word for rainbow is the same word used for a warrior's bow, a weapon that shoots arrows. It's as if God was hanging up his weapon, promising never to shoot flood arrows at the earth again. Have you ever noticed that a rainbow appears after a storm? The same water that can destroy can also create something beautiful when light shines through it. Every time we see those colors arching across the sky, we're looking at the same sign Noah saw. God's promise still stands today. What does this tell us about God's heart? It shows that even when he knows we'll mess up again, he chooses mercy over starting over. It reveals a God who is committed to working with us despite our flaws, rather than wiping us out. In this incredible moment, God established a new way of relating to humans, based on patience and mercy rather than immediate judgment. Instead of destroying evil, God would work within our broken world to bring about his purposes. But even after this divine moment, Noah was still human. And what happened next revealed just how human he was. The hero of the flood story was about to remind us that being chosen by God doesn't make you perfect. In fact, Noah's next chapter would include one of the most uncomfortable scenes in Genesis, one that most Sunday school teachers skip entirely. The flood was over. God had made his promise. Now Noah and his family needed to rebuild their lives in this fresh, clean world. Genesis tells us that Noah became a farmer. In fact, he was the first person to plant a vineyard after the flood. This wasn't just quick farming. Planting a vineyard meant Noah was settling down for the long haul. Grapevines take years to grow before they give good fruit. Noah was putting down roots, planning for the future. But then something happened that most Bible stories skip over. Noah made wine from his grapes. He drank too much of it. And then he passed out, naked in his tent. Wait, what? You might be thinking, Noah, the hero who saved all the animals? That Noah? Yes, that Noah. The Bible doesn't hide this uncomfortable truth. It simply says, he drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. The great hero of faith, the man who walked with God and built an ark when everyone laughed at him, had a very human moment of weakness. In those days, being naked wasn't just embarrassing, it was deeply shameful. This wasn't how the father of the new world should be found. This is where the story takes a turn. Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons, found his father in this state. But instead of quietly helping his father, Ham went and told his brothers about it. The Bible suggests he didn't just mention it, he may have mocked his father's condition. Shem and Japheth, Noah's other sons, responded very differently. They took a garment, walked backward into the tent so they wouldn't see their father naked, and covered him up. They protected their father's dignity when he couldn't protect it himself. When Noah woke up and learned what had happened, he faced a family crisis. How would the man who navigated the greatest disaster in history handle this personal disaster in his own family? Even after the flood washed away evil from the earth, it didn't wash away the weakness in human hearts. Noah's family still struggled with the same temptations and problems that existed before the flood. This family drama reminds us that even the greatest heroes in the Bible were still human. They made mistakes. They had family problems. They sometimes did things they regretted. Think about it. Noah had just experienced God's incredible protection through the flood. He had witnessed firsthand how God judges sin. Yet here he was, falling into sin himself. This shows us how strong temptation can be, even for those who have seen God's power up close. We might wonder, why did God include this embarrassing story in the Bible? Wouldn't it be better to just remember Noah as the righteous ark builder? But God's word doesn't hide the flaws of its heroes. It shows us real people with real struggles. This also teaches us about respect. Ham disrespected his father at Noah's most vulnerable moment. Instead of protecting his father's dignity, he exposed his shame. His brothers showed us a better way, covering another's shame and protecting their dignity. But what happened next would have consequences that lasted for generations. Noah's response to this family crisis would shape the destiny of entire nations. Would God's plan be ruined by this family conflict? Would Noah's mistake destroy everything he had built? And why would Noah punish someone who wasn't even involved in the incident? The answer reveals something surprising about how our actions affect not just us, but the people who come after us. And it shows us that God's plan keeps moving forward, even when we mess up. Noah woke up with what must have been a terrible headache. As his mind cleared, he realized something was wrong. He had been exposed, vulnerable, and someone had seen him in that shameful state. Somehow, Noah knew exactly what had happened while he was passed out. What Noah did next still surprises people today. Instead of cursing Ham directly for disrespecting him, Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan." Canaan was Ham's son, Noah's own grandson. "A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers," Noah declared. Wait, why would Noah curse his innocent grandson instead of the son who wronged him? This question has puzzled Bible readers for centuries. Some think that since God had already blessed Noah and his sons when they left the ark, Noah couldn't directly curse someone God had blessed. Others believe Noah saw in young Canaan the same disrespectful attitude he had seen in Ham. But here's another way to look at it. In ancient times, the worst punishment wasn't suffering yourself, but watching your children suffer. By cursing Canaan instead of Ham, Noah may have been giving Ham the most painful consequence he could think of, knowing his child would face hardship because of what he did. This family drama had real-world effects that played out over centuries. The Canaanites, who were Canaan's descendants, later lived in the land that became Israel. When the Israelites, who came from Shem's family line, conquered the Promised Land under Joshua, many Canaanites became servants to them, just as Noah had predicted. We need to clear something up. Throughout history, some people have wrongly used this story to justify terrible things like slavery and racism. But the Bible never connects Ham or Canaan with any particular skin color. The curse was specific to Canaan and the historical peoples who came from him, not about race at all. What does this difficult family story teach us? It shows that disrespect toward parents and authorities has serious ripple effects. It reminds us that our moral failures don't just affect us. They can impact our children and future generations. One moment of disrespect led to consequences that shaped nations. Ham's choice to dishonor his father instead of protecting him set in motion events that would affect people for centuries. Noah also cursed the Canaanites to serve the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Later, when we read about Israel from Shem's line conquering Canaan in the book of Joshua, we're seeing the fulfillment of this ancient family drama. It's a sobering reminder that what happens in the privacy of a family doesn't always stay there. Our family conflicts and how we handle them can have effects that ripple outward for generations. Yet, even in this painful episode, we see that God's plan wasn't derailed. The very next chapter of Genesis traces how all the sons of Noah, including Ham, spread out and became the nations of the world. Even after this family division, God was still working his purpose through flawed human families. Most importantly, through the line of Shem would eventually come another man who would change the world, not through a flood, but through a cross. A man who would offer not a curse, but forgiveness.